What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and I'm back with a second look at Despicable Me 3. That sound that you just heard was the dragon on my Mortal Kombat shirt hissing at you. It comes alive. I'm ready for Mortal Kombat. Uh, I, I've been told my first battle will be against Scorpion, so I'm sure I'll be fine. I'm sure I will. Nothing bad will happen to me. Anyway, Despicable Me 3 is the third film in the franchise, which has Gru voiced by Steve Carell. We've added Kristin Wiig after the second film. We still have the three girls. Agnes is still adorable, in case you were wondering, in case you're, worried that maybe she's not anymore. It's the third film. Maybe they decided to grow them up. Nope, Agnes, still adorable. She wants to find a unicorn in this, and then she gets a goat, and she's really happy about it. She's just adorable, and everybody wants a kid like Agnes. Just that is why people have kids. It's the other stuff before and after that, but there's a sweet spot there where you're just like, oh my god, she wants a unicorn. I can't give her a unicorn. Maybe I can give her a goat, and then see your kid still be excited over a goat. It's just amazing. Anyway, luckily we don't have necessarily the same minion capturing plot of the second film, so we're not trying to do that again. This film, in some ways, needs the minions less, although they're still there. They still play a huge part because they've added Drew, who takes up a predominant amount of screen time, which is a character that brings this film down for me greatly. He's probably the biggest reason I don't like the film, is I don't like Drew. It's just Steve Carell doing a slightly different variation on his Gru voice, and it's just not that interesting to me. It wasn't that interesting when I could see it and he had the hair, and that was the thing, is that he could flip his hair around and Gru was bald, and he was just like, oh my god, I don't know. I think the dynamic of having two brothers, who are alike and similar, but then having them voiced by the same person, I think I would have gone a different route with that. I would have had the opportunity to bring somebody else as Drew, who offered a completely different, a polar opposite to Gru, instead of being that sort of because there's already a lot of similarities. They look exactly the same, except one has hair. It's not even he's thin or anything like that. They didn't change the body structure. I mean, they literally look like twins, except one has hair. And I don't know. That's just really, is that enough? I think if you had gone in and changed the voice, I would have made it, especially considering Gru's personality, I think it would have been really fun to get somebody atypical to play Drew in this, a very strong masculine sounding voice, like Arnold, and to have Arnold sort of reading the same lines, I think could be even funnier than hearing Steve Carell just slightly modify his voice to play Drew. Sometimes people's voices, it's just especially as a blind audience, I'm highly aware it's the same person. Not everybody's Jim Cummings. Not everybody can literally fucking change their voice to mimic somebody else entirely. To the point where you're I don't think most people don't know that in Be Prepared, Jim Cummings actually does part of that because, he threw his voice out while singing Be Prepared, Jeremy Irons. So there was a part that they needed to, but Jeremy Irons couldn't do it. And because he, I guess while doing the "won't get a sniff out of me," he was messing up his voice. So Jim Cummings does a little fraction of Be Prepared because he was able to replicate Jeremy Irons' voice so well, so seamlessly, that you wouldn't even know where it was in the song, but it's a little thing that he got to slide in there and do. Um, and that's how you do it, is when you're completely able to lose the voice. It's all Steve Carell is doing. He's doing a voice, and then he's doing a modification on a voice. So I just don't think there's anything interesting about that. Now, I'll address the same elephant in the room, which is the fact that Trey Parker is in here as well. And he plays the villain, who's this like 80s obsessed bubblegum, diva wanting to take over, and, stuck in a certain timeline, obviously. With his own own prospects on world domination, his own villainy, and while Gru and Drew are trying to figure out their own stuff, and all of the B, C, D, E, F plot lines of this film that involve, Kristin Wiig, the kids, the minions, like all the downstream things are happening. There's still this villain played by Trey Parker. And one of the funny things about being blind and listening to him is it sounds like South Park. It sounds like Randy. It sounds like Randy Marsh is the villain. There's a scene where he shows a little cartoon of like his show or whatever, like that features his character in world domination, and it's like he's doing all the voices, obviously, and one of them is Cartman. Like they're obviously, these are just South Park voices. So I'm like, that's the problem with using Trey Parker, is that he's used all of his voices before. So for little kids watching Despicable Me 3 who haven't, I'm assuming at a certain age, you haven't shown your kids South Park yet, maybe. So for the young ones, I'm sure at some age, everybody watches I watched South Park when I was young too. So I'm not going to say, parents, damn you for showing your 10-year-old South Park. I think I was aware of South Park when I was, I don't know, 12 or something like that. But you can't, like, for older kids that are, it's, especially when you can't see the film anymore and you can't see his character design, because I've seen this and then also not seen it. So I know what his character looks like, but then also, now that I'm focused just on audio description, which this film does have, by the way, in case I didn't mention that earlier, it just sounds like South Park every time Trey Parker's on here. It's like, going down South Park, gonna have myself time. So I think that's one of the reasons about Despicable Me 3 that I don't like as much, is, they get away with Pierre Coffin doing the Minions because the Minions, nobody cares that they all sound the same. That's kind of their thing, is that they're kind of, it's hard to distinguish them. It's something I've mentioned in my previous 2 Despicable Me reviews, is how do you reach blind audiences through audio description, first of all, and convincingly give them a description of a minion, and then second of all, try to explain how they're all different. Like, what is it that makes them different? How do you know which one is Kevin, which one's Bob? How do you know those things? So, and that's a struggle for the audio description that I'm not entirely sure it achieves. I think if I sat down with a kid who had never seen this film before and asked them to describe a minion to me, and then to describe what makes these minions different, I don't know that they could do it. I'm not entirely sure that it matters, because part of it is, it's just goofy physical comedy. And if the kid's enjoying it, the kid's enjoying it. But there is something to be said about when you go out into the real world and you encounter other people, and they might have other siblings who can see, friends who can see, and they're having a completely different experience. And part of audio description is to bridge that gap. So we have to think about things like this. And that's kind of one of the biggest cruxes in the Despicable Me franchise, is what is a minion and how do I tell you what it is? In this film, it just becomes sort of an uninteresting experience for blind users, because you have people doing the same voices. So it just kind of feels like cheaply made. a little bit. Like, I know for them, it was like, it had to be they felt like it was a strong choice to have Steve do both voices. I don't know that it is a strong choice to have Steve do both voices. Um, but, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of any other franchise where they've done something similar to this and then had the same person do both voices, and I don't know that it's worked. Um, every once in a while, it makes sense when you have Tim Allen voicing all of the Buzz Lightyear toys in Toy Story. That makes sense because they would all have the same voice because they're toys. But Drew wouldn't just have a slightly higher pitched voice than Gru, you know? Like, that's all he's doing. He's just pitching his voice slightly higher, which I'm sure Steve was like, thank God I didn't pitch Gru any higher than what I've already pitched him at, because, you know, then they'd have to run auto-tune through his voice and like pitch correct it up. But it's not my favorite Despicable Me film. I don't totally hate it. There are parts of this when I was going back on the rewatch. I think there are parts of it that just I dislike, and those are the parts that I remember. But then there are like little parts, like Agnes is so cute with the unicorn shit that it's just like, that's not even like the main part of the movie, but I loved it. Like, I just loved her strong belief in being able to find a unicorn, you know, in the scene that she has with Gru, where he's like trying to measure her expectations and he just can't, you know, he just can't bring himself to do it. It's like the best scene in the movie for me. It has nothing to do with anything else that's going on. It's just like, it's just this, it shows you how much Gru has changed over the course of 3 films, going from, you know, a curmudgeonly villain to this guy who his heart just melts with Agnes and her love of unicorns, and he just can't bring to tell her that unicorns aren't real, you know? So is Despicable Me 3 unwatchable? No, it's not. It still is entertaining. It still has some things to it. Part of it is funny to sit there and think about, like, okay, well, that's Cartman in Despicable Me 3, you know, because Trey Parker only has just so many voices he can do. And considering how few people are voice talent for South Park, he's done about all of them he can possibly do already. I'm sure if I listened to South Park and Team America back to back, I'd be like, okay, well, that's that character, that's that character. So, even to hear him say Clyde, the fact that they named a character in Despicable Me Clyde, so that Trey Parker had to say Clyde all the time, it's like, well, there's a character called Clyde in South Park. So he says it the same way. Like, there's only one way he says the word Clyde. It's just interesting. So it's my least. I haven't seen 4 yet. So before seeing 4, including the Minions movies, Despicable Me 3 is my least favorite of the 5 films that I have seen thus far. Yes, including Minions and Despicable Me Rise of Gru, my least favorite. And a lot of that has to do with choices that we could have made differently. But I'm, at the end of the day, I'm gonna give Despicable Me 3 a C+. I still wouldn't go negative on it. I just, if I was tomato approved, it would still be fresh. That number would be low. It wouldn't be certified fresh with me, if that makes any sense. There's a range where you get that 60 to 70% where it's like, yeah, technically you're fresh, but everybody really wants to be above 70. So, anyway, that's it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.